Hello and welcome to the Empire of the Cop podcast. With me here today, we've got Peter Kenny-Jones and we've got the Reds Unrestricted podcast host, David Comerford, and of course, Rick Elliott in the wings. David, thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Obviously, turned into a really comfortable result last night in the end. Didn't look that way for a bit, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be on here. Talking more about the Reds.
Yeah, no, again, and I feel bad saying this every week, but a game really of two halves yet again from Jurgen Klopp's men. Like pretty much as close to a perfect half as you're going to get from a football team in that first 45 minutes of action. I mean, the scoreline just didn't reflect the level of sheer brutal dominance, we had, didn't it, Dave?
Yeah, well, honestly, watching the first half, it was strange because going into it, I was very confident, and that's quite rare for me actually to be confident going into a game. But I wasn't really. It was reinforced by what we saw in the first 35 minutes and the whole half really of the game. And yeah, when it got to half time, I was thinking we could be in for a sort of 4 or 5-0 win. To be honest, that might sound a bit sort of arrogant, but that's the way it was looking. You alluded to it there. And then we get into second half, obviously, about 10 minutes into it, they get the goal. And really, there was sort of an extended spell of pressure from them. I think it lasted almost sort of 15, 20 minutes. It wasn't that Liverpool reasserted themselves quickly. They had to sort of ride out the storm a little bit, to be honest. And then obviously got the goal late on. So, yeah, it's one of them where it's a very good result, like I said. I do wonder if in an ideal world, we might have won by 1 or 2 more. And then next week, we get to rest our key players. Obviously, with the difficulty of the schedule we got coming up, that might have been useful, but you can't really complain, can you? About 3-1.
Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head there with the schedule, because April is looking a particularly tough month on all fronts, the league and FA Cup included. But I mean, you do look at the scoreline and you think, well, a 3-1 away in Lisbon, it's a decent result. In the Champions League, Benfica, certainly, they're not a bad side. I think, they wouldn't have got this far in the competition if they were. But I mean, Pete, we look at that second half and, obviously thinking going in at 2-0, you take going in at 2-0 half time, but David rightly pointed out, we could have been much higher scoreline. What sort of really went wrong for you?
Canate 1 second looked the wrong way or took his eye off the ball and they scored. I think, although as David said, they had 5, 10, 15 minutes of being much more in the game. I don't think they really looked like they were going to score. It was a lot closer than it had been, and obviously their fans were desperate for anything to go off to try and get the atmosphere going, and that's what worked in their favour. I think, they started all right as well in the first 5, 10 minutes, and then obviously we just took total control of the game and maybe got a bit complacent. Kanata, as I say, does that one mistake, which, from everything else he did in the game was brilliant, and that's the life of a defender and a goalkeeper. If you do something like that, it can most often ends up in a goal, doesn't it? So he was unlucky and the game was close, but we battered them. It's not often that in our lives, I think that, or the life of any football fan, you're going to get to the quarter final of the Champions League and be that dominant in a game away from home. We have got a lot of games coming up, and obviously the next one's in between 2 games against Man City. But I think to be able to go at home and know if we score 1 or 2 early, the tie's pretty much done. And we've got 5 subs, so you can afford to play a few big hitters, win the game, and take them off. And as Klopp was saying, he was fortunate to be able to make those 3 changes. And I think Henderson and Firmino did really well when they came on. I'm not saying Jota didn't, but I think they just really helped control the game, win the ball back, and setting the tempo. And it's a luxury to have all those players on the bench. And suddenly out of nowhere we've signed Luis Diaz, and we've got one of the best squads in Europe after one signing. And yeah, it's just amazing how good we are really. And we roll on to Sunday and really in high form. Why can't we go and roll anyone else away?
Absolutely. Luxury is the right word. Exactly. I mean, David, it's not bad being a Liverpool fan when you can take off Mo Salah and Sadio Mane and then just casually bring on Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota. I mean, one man I want to sort of quickly touch upon before we get to another whose fortunes have perhaps taken a turn for the worse. I mean, Naby Keita looked a force of nature against Benfica. It was the exact kind of game that you looked at and you think that's the player we all saw when you were at Leipzig. That's the player, the complete midfielder, to quote the player himself, that we all sort of looked at and thought, my God, this is perfect. We can get that, that's going to, you're really going to live up to the expectations of the shirt that was left behind. Because it's another one that sort of goes under the radar when we're talking about contracts, because Naby Keita's contract it expires in 2023, as does the likes of Salah's, which has obviously taken a lot of the headlines for, all the right reasons. But with performances like that, if you can continue to contribute in such a manner throughout the rest of the season, is there pretty much a case there then for giving him a contract extension?
Well, yeah, I think first of all, you're right about the contract situation. I mean, it's not just even Salah and Keita. You've got Mane and Firmino as well. Oxlade-Chamberlain, I think, is in a similar position. So it has gone a bit under the radar. I think the thing with Keita is, and there's no doubt that was one of his best performances for Liverpool yesterday. I think complete was the right word to describe it, to be honest. Very, very good on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the best moment coming at the end with the bit of play that leads to Diaz's goal. But I think generally, for the most part, I mean, 1 or 2 games aside, his performances have always sort of been sort of 7 out of 10 or above. And that hasn't really been the question mark with Keita. I do think he's grown as a footballer this season and has taken on a more kind of under the radar but effective role in kind of the manner of Gini Wijnaldum. But the question mark has obviously always been his fitness. But if you look at it this season, and obviously he wasn't available, I don't think, for the game against Watford. So it's not been perfect. And there was a muscle injury he sustained in the autumn as well. But other than that, really, his availability has actually been pretty good. And he's been able to sort of rotate. I know they both played yesterday, but rotate with Thiago a lot of the time and offering similar things in the midfield. And it looks like he's going to end up playing potentially as many games as he has his whole Liverpool career or close to that first season. So I think if he can combine those performances with the availability and stay fit crucially until the end of the season, then that's when it becomes a really compelling case to give him a new deal. Because like I say, it's not been the question, his ability, and I don't think Klopp has had doubts about that. It's been whether he's ready to play. And that has improved this season. Whether the club have changed the way they're managing him, I don't know, but it certainly has looked a lot brighter. And I think generally the feeling around Keita at the moment is as good as it has been for a number of years.
Absolutely. I think availability is absolutely the key issue. I mean, we've seen it with the likes of obviously Joel Matip, who again was a player that nobody really doubted the quality was there, but you get not even halfway through the season, there'd be a knee injury and we wouldn't see him again. So evidently having that availability and proving, the ability that we all rightly know that he has, will potentially go massively in his favour, and, fingers crossed on that front. Pete, that does mean I've left you with the less savoury topic, of course, of Mo Salah's form, which is, by all accounts, taken something of a dip since, forget the World Cup qualifiers. He hasn't seemed his usual self since the African Cup of Nations. Klopp alluded to this after the game, and he obviously talked about, Mane's in the ascendancy, Salah not so much, and talks about the pressure that's been heaped on their shoulders with their international commitments. And obviously, it's fair to say Mo's been through the ringer, really, with the national side, with those 2 results. Do you reckon that's sort of playing on his mind a little, or is it something else?
Well, it's hard to know. Mo probably won't know either himself. That's the frustrating thing, isn't it? We saw what happened with Mane, with the season where he was getting himself checked out. He didn't understand why he wasn't playing as well. Sometimes you're in form, sometimes you're not. It's just kind of what happens, isn't it? I think we know that football is not just about how fit you are. You've got to be mentally prepared. And there's no doubt that losing the AFCON title and not qualifying for the World Cup will affect them mentally. Obviously it will. And, these players, come from around the world. They're not scouts. Their dreams are to do the things for their country, and then they're good enough to leave their country and play in the league, like the Premier League, and achieve everything they want. But there's no doubt that Salah will probably swap his Premier League and Champions League medal to win AFCON and go and do really well in the World Cup. So it's obviously going to affect him. Maybe again, because we've got Diaz, Jota and Firmino nipping at his tail. maybe he likes the pressure of being the one man we rely on. And now I like the fact that there's a few others in there. And then again, the contract, everyone's talking about them every time. And I think fans most of the time are fully behind him, but it's in the back of a lot of supporters' heads. If he leaves in the summer and a big money deal, and there'll be a lot of people upset with him, whether that little 1% less support, maybe that's not helping him either. It's a combination of things, but we all know that he can turn up any game he can play against City on Sunday, he can score a hat-trick, and no one will be surprised and just say, Salah's back. So it's just about how he finds his form again. And, he looked happy last night when he put that picture up with him and Trent and Robbo in the pool, and he so his mind's fully on trying to win every trophy he can, and he won't be upset losing out on a top goal scorers award if it means he gets a bit of silverware elsewhere in the FA Cup, Premier League, Champions League. So that's what the season's all about now. And if he doesn't find his form, we're blessed again. We've got some other amazing strikers, so we can afford him to have a couple of weeks off, and then someone else will take the limelight, like Luis Diaz last night, and Sadio Mane scoring. So we are blessed, and it's just on him to get himself back to the place where we all know he can be.
No, absolutely. I think, as far as I'm personally concerned, I don't think it's an issue of happiness at Liverpool, because, fundamentally, I think obviously all the speculation, all the reports coming out of the club seems to be he's as committed to extending his contract as the club are to handing him a new contract. Obviously, it's whether they can find that key middle ground. But we'll circle back to City shortly. Dave, there's been a lot of sort of chatter about this in terms of the contract. First it seemed that it was on, then it seemed that it wasn't on. There was the infamous interaction online. His agent sort of come out with the laughing emojis in response to Jurgen Klopp's sort of presser comments. Then we've had sort of recent reports that suggest, that it does seem to be back on. The Egyptian sports minister came out and said he'd spoken to Salah, advised him to, get the hell out of Liverpool and seek a different club. And the assumption seemed to be that Salah was like, no, I want to stay. I'm committed to extending my future at Liverpool. Where do you stand on all this? Because it seems to be a situation that's constantly shifting and evolving. Do you see this landing sort of sunny side up for Liverpool?
Well, to put it in perspective, if you'd said to me at the start of the season that we'd reach April, because at the start of the season we were talking about it as well, you said to me we'd reach April and we hadn't reached a solution, then I'd be thinking, oh, well, that's very worrying. And I don't really know how to feel about it, to be honest. It kind of varies week to week almost how you feel about it, and how confident you are. I think the reports that we've seen recently are obviously positive, but they're not very widespread. And I think Melissa Reddy pushed back on the suggestion that it was maybe close after a couple of reports suggested that it was. And yeah, the dynamic you mentioned with his agent isn't great. I think it's a case of Salah does want to stay at Liverpool, and you can understand that, we're essentially one of the top two clubs in the world. So anywhere he could go now would almost be a step down. And he also has to think about his sort of relative status as well, which I think does matter quite a lot to him, in terms of he's the big superstar in this side. Whereas is that going to be the case if he goes somewhere else? Well, obviously there's the financial element as well. And he wants to be put on the same plane as the players that he's performing, as well as, he's one of the best in the world. And it feels like who blinks first, really, between the two parties. Do Liverpool up their offer? Does Salah bring his demands down? And I do wonder, I wrote a piece not that long ago about how Salah doesn't actually have that many obvious options in Europe. And I wonder if he actually looks at the clubs and the state of them, because the Premier League is the place to be at the moment. And you look at like Barcelona, financial troubles, Real Madrid, going for Mbappe and Haaland. Can they afford Salah? Does Salah want to compete with them for the limelight kind of thing? So there's a few considerations like that. So I do think the club are sort of, I'm not sure whether they'd be panicking yet. I think maybe they would be inclined to wait for Salah to extend a bit of an olive branch, if you like, because if negotiations have reached an impasse at the moment. So yeah, it is a difficult one. It does very much seem like it's kind of deadlocked at the moment. And like I say, hard to gauge it. But I'm still optimistic that he'll sign a new deal. But like I say, the fact that we're not too far off being a year away from the expiry now is a little bit alarming.
Optimistic, but still far from certain, sadly. But, as you've rightly noted, the options beyond Liverpool are far from appetising. You're looking at probably, if you're excluding Manchester City, Bayern Munich is probably your best bet in terms of a club that's going to give you that same, well, perhaps not the same level of competitiveness, but a similar level of competitiveness, but then still, with all due respect to the Bundesliga, in a comparatively weaker league. Looking, of course, ahead to Manchester City. Pete, what's your thoughts on this? We had a little poll on Empire of the Cock to see what supporters were feeling about Mo's recent form, and specifically whether it should rule him out of starting for Liverpool at the Etihad. I can tell you the results now, and it's overwhelmingly still in favour of him starting, to the tune of 87.4% of almost 5,000 fans have voted on this issue. So, it's hard to dispute. I think you mentioned this earlier because we were talking about sort of, this is Mo Salah. I think if it was any other player in the form he's in, you'd probably think straight to the bench. Klopp's not going to put up with that. But you're talking about a player as special as Mo Salah, and all you need is one special moment at the Etihad to give you that, big result that potentially, sees you finish the season strongly on all fronts and remain in competitions that we're involved in. For you, is it obvious as just starting? The star qualities there. We just need one incredible moment, and that's it.
Well, probably the only thing I disagree on is I think Klopp would be the same if it was Sadio Mane going to the same form. I think he'd still, for this game, you go with what you know. We know Salah and Mane. I think they'll definitely start both of them. I think, as that vote shows, I think most people will pick them. And obviously, this was about Salah. But I don't think there's any reason to take out the player with the most goals in the league. And I'm not sure if he's still top assist or joint, but he's definitely up there as well. I don't think you take him out the squad. I think the main question is who the one is with them. Possibly, I think, if we're looking for an exciting prospect, you probably think, let's see what Diaz can do. You want to play it safe, and you know that you're going to be get the performance you want and battling from the front. You play for Mino, and then Jota just can't stop scoring himself either. So it's an embarrassment of riches again. But I do think the two definitely will start as Salah and Mane. And the question is who's alongside them. And it's never a bad thing to see any of them play, is it? I don't think there'll be anyone who says, for God's sake, Mo Salah starting against City. It's form or not form, you rely on what you know. And we've had a few big games against them. They've always seemed to come a bit earlier or a bit less with everything on the line. I think obviously you think of the John Stones one when he clears it off the line. That was obviously a massive game. But I think we look at the Champions League one, Salah's been there and provided big moments, and why can't he do it again? And there's no question for me really. Mo Salah defo starts, and I don't think Klopp would be thinking about not playing him, and that's why him and Mane came off early yesterday. I think it was a little bit premeditated. Obviously, if the game was a bit tight, then he might have thought otherwise, but he does seem to always have these hour mark substitutions lined up, especially when he's got 5 subs to use. So, it'd be Salah and Mane, and then I think I probably reckon he might even go with Bobby just to start with, and then see what happens from there. But whatever he picks, it's going to be good. So that's all I'm interested in.
No, absolutely. In this month, so much football that's going to be played and so many big games to be played critically. It's critical that we do take advantage of that 5-sub rule and do rest players where we can. I suppose the question is, with this game coming up, and obviously, David, it's been billed by a lot of commentators as a potential title decider. Both managers, though, on other sides have disputed this. Klopp's come out and said, well, you can beat City at the Etihad, but they're still, one of the best teams in the world, and they can win all the remaining games. Liverpool slip up, and then it changes. And Guardiola has pretty much echoed that in his own presser comments. I suppose my question for you is, where does the pressure lie here? Because obviously Liverpool are the chasers, and I think many would argue there's less pressure on you as the chaser. There's only 2 points separating the two sides. Which position would you rather be in going into this game?
I would say Man City's position. Obviously, home advantage is a big factor, but not just that. In terms of the dynamic of the game, the reason I'd favour City is because if they draw the game, that suits them. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think personally that a draw does suit Liverpool. It's not the end of the world if Liverpool draw, but City, I think if it does finish as a draw and the 1 point gap remains and they kind of get out of it without falling behind, I think they'll back themselves to come through the remaining games that they have with maximum points, to be honest. And I know they've got one or two tricky ones in there, but it's a decent look and run for them, and they've got experience of doing it as well. Obviously, we saw 18-19 that they managed to do that as Liverpool putting them under pressure. And it's interesting what you say about Klopp as well, because I do think it's something that's important to be stressed before the game. If Liverpool win and go 2 points ahead of City, we need to keep our feet on the ground, as a team and as a fan base as well, because we have to start to come through the rest of our games. City might not drop another point after that. And our fixtures are much more difficult. The one I look at in particular is Tottenham at home. Obviously, they've already won at the Etihad. They've got one of the best managers in the world. They're one of the informed teams in the league at the moment. The difficulty of the schedule, it's looking really tricky for us, and we've got competing demands to juggle as well, Champions League, FA Cup. So, yeah, I think there is more pressure on us, to be honest. And I think if City win and go 4 points ahead, then that's when it'll feel like a title decider in a strange way. Whereas if we win, it could be a decisive moment, obviously. But is it the be all and end all? I don't think so. There's a lot of work still to be done, even if we do manage to. But we've got to make sure that we don't lose the game, because it will feel like a bit of a mountain to climb after that.
No, absolutely. I mean, Pete, 1 point between us, but as David rightly pointed out, City win, it's 4 points between us suddenly, and that suddenly seems an oddly, almost not quite insurmountable, but a significant gap at this stage in the season. Is that title race over for you, as far as you're concerned, if we do lose at the Etihad, or is it still all to play for?
Well, there's not going to be a trophy given out after the game, no matter what the result is. So, that says where it is in the season. But I think, if we win, I don't think anyone will be saying we've won. And if we lose, I think there'll be a lot more people saying we've lost the league there on that one. So I think maybe it's just about not losing. I felt like before that international break, they seemed to be faltering and stuttering a bit. And I did think that if we just don't lose there, I'd back us to win the rest of the games we've got. And hopefully the pressure on them to repeat in Europe will mean that they'll slip up somewhere. But it's just, you don't know, do you? That's why this game's going to be so big and so anticipated, because both these teams have comfortably got it in them to go and win every game after that one. It wouldn't be a surprise if we went and beat City. We could go on the run that we win every game and win every cup. That's not beyond the realms of possibility. And the same for Man City. They could, as Klopp said, they're probably more favourites to win the treble than we are to win the quadruple, because they're leading the way in both. And I think in a one-off game, it's always hard to play against City. So Wembley one's going to be hard. They've got the home match. They've got the point lead in the Premier League. And in Europe, it means so much to them that they're going to throw everything at it. So it's hard to say. And not, as I said, nothing's going to be won, nothing's going to be lost. If we win it, I'll be confident that we can just carry on going. But as you say, just that Tottenham game, and when's the last time we beat Everton and United home and away in the same season? I can't remember it. That's a massive ask. Those games take form out the window, and it's just, whatever happens, it's going to be exciting, and hopefully we win. And you just know the atmosphere for every single game for the rest of the season is going to be amazing, and just enjoy the ride. It's probably the best thing. It's going to be stressful, it's going to be nervy, but let's just hope we edge it and just keep enjoying the next 2 months and see where it takes us.
I mean, absolutely. But fundamentally, we've seen this, so many times before. But, if you look at this stage of the season, how many times at this stage of the season have Liverpool already won a trophy and are still in the 3 remaining competitions, and with a reasonable shout of coming away with further silverware. It's incredible. We know we've lauded this team, for so long, this manager for so long, to be this point in the season, still have so much to play for. It's a brilliant situation to be in, but tough game, of course, extremely tough game. And with that in mind, Pete, how are you feeling for a score? Because you tend to go big, but I have a feeling for this one you'll be a bit more reserved.
I won't say 5, but I do think we can fly at them, and why not go and score loads of goals? I think you said Salah's desperate to get his goals going again. So I'm going to say, as I said the other year, with that first leg at Anfield, I could have that feeling for us, and I'll say 3-0 Liverpool. I reckon they're going to knock them on the floor. They're going to be, what's going on? Salah's got a hat-trick, and then suddenly get your flights booked to Paris. We're going to win the quadruple. That's what's going to happen this weekend.
You know what, Pete? I always will come to you for positivity. I love it. I absolutely love it. David, I don't know how you stand on potential score predictions. Some of our guests love it. Some aren't so inclined. Where do you fall?
I don't mind doing predictions. I know some people have this sort of superstition where they don't like to sort of say we'll win because they feel like they're inviting a bit of punishment or something. I think you should have maybe come to Pete second, and then you could have almost had the more optimistic nose afterwards. But I think that it'll be a draw. I think it'll be a decent scoring draw, maybe another 2-2. I think it's one of them where it's almost guaranteed to be a great game of football. Not that that's going to make any difference to us. We'll be suffering throughout it anyway as fans. But yeah, I think the attacks on show will mean that it could be a high scoring draw, which again isn't the end of the world. Might feel like a slight missed opportunity, but we'd still be very much in it. I think to win the game, we'd have to produce potentially the best performance we have across the whole Jurgen Klopp era. To go there and win, or just have a lot of luck. That could be a factor as well. So it'll be interesting. And I think I say that when I say things like that, it almost excites me in a way, because it's like there is an opportunity going into this game. If either team wins, it'll be looked back on as a classic game for that team, and especially for us, like I say, there's an opportunity to make history. So that's a more positive way of looking at it. The other more realistic way is that I'm dreading it and don't want to think about it until 3:55 or 4:25 on Sunday. But yeah, I reckon my instinct is that it'll be a draw, but not kind of an anticlimactic one. Certainly like a spectacular one.
That's the thing. If we end up winning, we're all looking back on it, going, "Oh, what a great game! What a great game!" But I just know every single one of us will be, on the edge of our seats, fingernails between our teeth, sort of thing. I was originally inclined to agree with you on the 2-2, but Pete's positivity has infected me, and I'm going to go for. I'll go between you all. I'll go for like a nice little 2-1 cheeky away win at the Etihad. We'd all take it right now, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Certainly, City are far from being mugs. But here today at the Empire of the Cop podcast, we've had Peter Kenny Jones, Rick Elliott in the wings, and we've had, of course, the host of the Reds Unrestricted podcast, Dave Comerford. Dave, before you leave, any plugs you want to drop in here before you head off?
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity. Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, and then you'll find links to the podcast every week. Dave_Comerford. I'll just post them on there, and obviously tweet quite a bit about Liverpool as well. So yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Brilliant stuff. It's a great podcast. So definitely everyone have a little cheeky look at that. But for now, we've been the Empire of the Cock podcast. Thanks for joining us, and take care.